Okay, we are back live with our $1,000 bankroll challenge. Now, if you have not been following this so far this season, of course, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. If you have not supported the channel yet by going and using promo code FLOCK and making at least a $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy, you need to fix your life. You need to change that ASAP. But what we've been doing with our sponsor on Underdog Fantasy is we're starting off with $1,000, and every single week we're going out and we're making some NFL player prop bets, and we're seeing what we can spend this $1,000 up to. Now, let me put a massive disclaimer out here. I'm not trying to sit here and act like we're going to become a millionaire off this $1,000 bankroll, because you have to be smart here. You have to know that Underdog Fantasy, they're giving you a max deposit bonus when you sign up and you use promo code FLOCK. They'll match whatever you deposit up to $100, 100%. So if they're giving you that, and at the same time they're paying me when you sign up, that kind of tells us that Underdog Fantasy, they are smarter than 90% of us in this chat. They're smarter than 90% of us watching this channel. So while we have been profitable so far this season on Underdog Fantasy, and of course I'm completely transparent, we show y'all all the results because I kind of have to keep up with this bankroll challenge, to show y'all everywhere we're at. I mean, I'm not expecting to be profitable through the rest of the season, even though we've crushed so far this year. So let me go through, before we pick out the picks this week, in this week alone, let me show y'all what we have done so far this season. So you're going to see a lot of red because we're picking parlays here. So you're going to see that red, but what we have to know is look at the numbers, and the numbers are going to be it where you see a -10, -17, +120, +120. Scroll down. I mean, we had a tough week this week here. This was our first and only losing week of the year. We keep on going. You get a 150, get another 150 down here. So you're going to see a lot of red, but these spikes, I mean, that 150 makes up for a 10, a 20, a 25, 25, 25. That's what you see. We'll see some massive wins over here. 120, 200, 204, 120. 100, 300, 100, and we can go through the entire week, entire year, so y'all can pause it, screenshot it, whatever you want to do to see exactly how we have done so far this season if you want to keep up with this bankroll challenge. But yeah, let's go through and let's look at the Pickum lines that they have for this week, and let's talk about some strategy that I'm going to have when we are looking at these Pickum lines. So one thing that I think a lot of people make the mistake on with Underdog Fantasy is just going through and go, oh, I like the Tua under, oh, I like the Sam Darnold over, oh, I like the Cordell Patterson over, and then they go through and bet these three lines even though they're not correlated at all. We have to be trying to get an advantage over Underdog Fantasy here, and how we get that advantage is with the correlation in the picks that we are making. So say you really like this Jalen Waddle over. You go, okay, Jalen Waddle, I think he is really going to hit over 54.5 receiving yards at the minimum. If you think that's going to happen and you bet that over, what else is likely to happen? What else is likely to happen is that Tua Tagovailoa also hits that over at the same time. So we have to build in that correlation. And if Waddle and Tua are both going to hit their overs, we know that you're going to have Buffalo most likely pushing the ball in the second half, putting up a lot of points on their own right. So that would maybe make you want to take the Josh Allen over as well. Now, personally, I'm not a massive fan of those lines in particular. I can go through and let's do some research in this game. We go game by game rather than looking at the lines all over the place. So let's first check out this Miami Dolphins and Buffalo Bills contest to see what kinds of bets we want to be making here. Now, if you're looking at Josh Allen so far this season to see how many weeks we have had him hit over 320 total yards, he was right there in week 1, could not cracked that threshold against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Didn't come close the last time he played the Miami Dolphins, where he barely had 300 total yards. Then since then, he's been crushing this season. 370 yards against the Titans last week. 2 weeks ago, almost 370 yards against the Chiefs. Against the Texans, he has 290. So honestly, this is a stay away line. I really like this Emmanuel Sanders over, if we're going to be honest. But the problem is, because I'm not a massive fan of the Josh Allen one, I think that this is actually going to be a stay away game for us. Because if you're going to be looking at Emmanuel Sanders, I mean, this is a wide receiver that you have to understand, no Dawson Knox will be raising the target share projection for Emmanuel Sanders this week in Buffalo. And with Emmanuel Sanders, Sanders for 53.5 receiving yards. He's actually gotten here every single week so far this season, besides 2. I mean, if you're looking at his receiving yards per game, is way higher than this. He's had 91, 54, 74, 94. The 2 first weeks this season, 52 and 48. He barely missed this threshold with no Dawson Knox. Actually really like over 53.5 receiving yards for Sanders. And with Jalen Waddle, yes, Jalen Waddle's been crushing 54.5 receiving yards as of late, but you will have Devontae Parker in this matchup, and this is going to be a much closer game as well for Waddle in this offense. Let me see what we have had from Tua. You're naturally going to be assuming that Tua in this Miami Dolphins passing offense, they are going to have to be throwing the ball aggressively in this contest, just given the fact that we know Buffalo's going to be putting up a decent amount of points. Now with Tua, over the past 2 weeks, he has totaled over 291 passing yards in each contest. And you know, honestly, because I like the Sanders line so much, I want to take it. And at the same time, we want to get some correlation in here. So we will take the over with Waddle and we will take the over with Tua. And like I said, we're not expecting to hit a lot of these, but just knowing that it's a parlay, you only have to hit a few. So we'll bet 17 to win 102. Let's get that ticket slip in and let's go over to our next game, because that's how our strategy is on Underdog Fantasy. That's how we've been successful so far this season. Do not fall into the sucker play of picking one line from one game, going over to the other game. Instead, we're going to go through and we are just going to be looking at individual games. And let's go to our next one with the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. And here with Carolina, you have a couple aggressive lines on DJ Moore, Chuba Hubbard. Now, this is actually, I believe, the lowest line you've had from Hubbard since he's taken over as the starting running back for Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, a great matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. And to be honest, I mean, Calvin Ridley, while yes, he has definitely been disappointing and he hasn't been getting to 75 receiving yards so far this season, this is someone that averaged over 10 yards per target back in 2020, and he has averaged over 10 targets per game so far this year. I really want to bet that the passing volume in the passing production is going to be taking a step up in the direction of Calvin Ridley, but the problem is he's only had 75.5 receiving yards one game this season, and it's not like he crushed that mark. He only had that one time, and that was against Washington in week 4. So although I love betting on Calvin Ridley for the future, I just think there's not a ton of upside to take the over on Calvin Ridley at 75.5 receiving yards. Now, if we're not going to love that line outside of this, I mean, maybe you can look at Matt Ryan. He's been a lot more efficient as of late as a passer. We always know that the passing attempts are going to be there with Matt Ryan. It's more so, can we rely on the efficiency? And if you're looking at 281 passing yards as the threshold, he's gotten there 3 times so far this season. The past 2 weeks, he's crushed over 300 passing yards with a breakout from Kyle Pitts. With Kyle Pitts himself, obviously, this is a tight end that if you're looking the past 2 weeks, 68.5 receiving yards does not look like an aggressive mark for him in the slightest. But to be honest, I think that this is going to be a stay away game from us in general, just because I don't really love any of these lines for the Carolina Panthers. I mean, with DJ Moore, he's only gotten to this mark twice so far this season, even though it's a great matchup. I think this is going to be a stay away game from us between the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. We can find another that we prefer more. And of course, let me say this again, just in case I haven't. Go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. When you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy and make at least a $10 deposit, they 100% match that deposit all the way up to $100. And you support this channel more than you would ever believe. So go through the link in the live chat. Go through the link in the description of the video. Use promo code FLOCK. And yeah, let's go over to our next game with the Pittsburgh Steelers here and the Cleveland Browns. And in Pittsburgh, you are going to have Chase Claypool, in my opinion, looking like a damn good value at 52.5 receiving yards with no Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, with Claypool here, this past week, only 17 receiving yards against the Seahawks. I apologize, back in week 6. But despite that, we know that Claypool is going to have the expanded role. Now, in regards to taking the over on Claypool, the problem is if we're taking that over on the receiver, I'm going to have to either take the over on Big Ben or the over on Baker Mayfield, because I want to be betting that this is going to be a higher scoring game than most people are expecting if we were taking that over on Claypool. Now, in regards of Deontay Johnson, maybe you prefer going Deontay. Deontay, of course, is going to get the target volume. He's just been very inefficient with the targets that he has had so far, really throughout his entire NFL career. He has hit that 67.5 receiving yard mark 4 out of the 5 weeks that he has played so far this season. Let me check out what we have had from Ben Roethlisberger. Maybe we make this a little bit of a larger parlay. Of course, this is a tougher matchup against the Cleveland Browns here, but with Ben Roethlisberger in regards to getting to 245 passing yards, this is someone that's done that so far 3 times this season. But you know what? I think that these lines on Claypool and Deontay Johnson are so fair that I actually want to take them. So I'm not a massive fan of this Ben Roethlisberger 245 passing yards line, but from a process standpoint, I think that if we're going to like these lines and want to attack the overs on Claypool and Deontay, we're going to have to do the same thing with Big Ben. And if we're going to be assuming that the Pittsburgh Steelers throw the ball effectively in this game, you naturally assume that we're going to get the same thing on the other side of the coin with Baker Mayfield. So we're going to be taking the over with Baker. And one thing that I know we've had a lot of people always reaching out every single week, we have a lot of people reaching out going, oh, Mason, I won $300 on Underdog Fantasy this week with my 20x parlay. I bet $10 and I won $200. And my response to that always is, well, congrats, but that's probably a reckless bet. You, the majority of the time, do not want to be having five bets on a single ticket. So honestly, we're going to be avoiding anything else. I want to be making a hard rule on us. I know a lot of people have been reaching out saying, Mason, I won this much with our 5 bets on that one parlay. But at the same time, while a lot of people have been reaching out and saying that, you know who isn't reaching out and saying that? All the people that lost money with the 5-team parlay. So we're just going to go through and we're going to we'll bet 15 to win 150 that you actually have this game being higher scoring than expected. Now let's go to our next contest here. And with the New York Jets, I think that we can easily just avoid this game in general. I think that when you're looking at Underdog Fantasy, they haven't put out the lines yet for the Jets receivers just because we don't know the exact health of Corey Davis. They haven't put out the lines for the Titans because we don't know the exact health for Julio Jones. So maybe I make a bet on that with the live stream on Sunday morning, but we're going to avoid that for now so we have more options later on. Now with Tennessee, Michael Pittman at 64.5 receiving yards against with Indianapolis going up against Tennessee. Like I said, I really want us to have more lines on this side, so we're going to have to avoid this game in general, which definitely does suck. But now going over to Philadelphia, Kenneth Gainwell at 32.5 rushing yards. Kenneth Gainwell has been a player that, of course, I've been asked a ton of questions about on the live streams so far. And with Gainwell, this is a running back that we've been saying, you don't exactly know what the workload's going to look like between him, Boston Scott, and Jordan Howard, where definitely Gainwell is the running back that you're projecting to take over as the starting running back for Miles Sanders. But even Miles Sanders himself wasn't super productive with this workload earlier in the year. So I think we want to be trying to look a little bit more into the Kenneth Gainwell usage that we had after Sanders went down. Now, if you're going to be looking at exactly what we had, he did really get the bump up in the receiving portion. He only had 5 carries. You had Boston Scott coming on, taking some carries away from Kenneth Gainwell. It's a great matchup against the Detroit Lions. You know what we're probably going to do? I think maybe we avoid this Kenneth Gainwell line. And I know a lot of people aren't going to want to see us do this. But if we take a step back and remember the quarterback that Jalen Hurts was at the beginning of the season, this is someone that, yes, over the past 2 weeks has struggled a ton, but you have seen Jalen Hurts in flashes be able to effectively move the ball down the field against poor defenses. So I think that we're going to make a bet on Jalen Hurts. Devonta Smith has seen about a 25% team target share so far this season with no Zach Ertz in this offense. And with Zach Ertz leaving about 5 targets available per game, Devonta Smith had 9 targets a week ago. I think we're probably going to be taking the over on what the combination is of Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith here. And then if we're going to be assuming that they're hitting their over, we know that you're going to have Detroit coming out and Detroit most likely putting up a decent amount of production. Problem is we don't have that many options with the Detroit Lions, but as long as we have Jared Goff to look at, I think we're going to be fine. If you're looking at DeAndre Swift, he's gotten to 52.5 receiving yards 3 times this year, but this past week he did that off of 1 reception only, so I probably want to be avoiding that DeAndre Swift line. With Jared Goff, of course, this is mainly going to be a bet on just him to go out there and get there in garbage time, because Jared Goff's not going to be an effective passer through the first 2 quarters. With Jared Goff, he's hit 266.5 passing yards 3 times so far this year, but honestly, it's been a close call, a couple of those. He's had a lot of games hovering around 202, 203, 217 passing yards. So I hate to say it, maybe this is another stay away game. Oh my gosh. I feel like underdogs lines this week are a lot harder to bet than usual. Okay, Elijah Mitchell, let's lock him in for the under. We're taking Elijah Mitchell's under in a tough matchup against the Chicago Bears. We've been smashing the Justin Fields unders consistently. I think here maybe it's a little bit of a tougher call. They have Khalil Herbert down there at 67.5 rushing yards. We've just been so profitable taking those unders on Justin Fields. I mean, with Justin Fields, this has been a quarterback that I know 190 passing yards seems like it's laughably low, but literally he has started 5 games so far this year, and he's gotten to 190 passing yards once. And it is a very tough matchup against the 49ers. So you know what? We're going to be taking the under on Elijah Mitchell. We're going to take the over on, we're going to go on a full-on 4-player stack here because this line on Jimmy Garoppolo I think is very safe. Yes, Jimmy Garoppolo is coming off of a pretty down performance, but keep in mind it was in the context of pretty much a monsoon in San Francisco. I think it's going to be a much easier contest in Chicago this week. Deebo Samuel's been averaging over 10 targets a game at the same time. So I think we are going to be going and taking the over on Deebo. We're going to be taking the over on Jimmy Garoppolo, the under on Elijah Mitchell, and the under on Justin Fields as well. No, you know what? I lied to you because this doesn't make sense. If we're making a bet that the 49ers are having to throw the ball, in that instance, you would assume that Chicago was able to put up points. So, I don't even know if we can take that under on Justin Fields. I'm not taking the over on Justin Fields. I think the over on Justin Fields would be a really bad line. But I do want to be taking the over on either one of their wide receivers, or I want to be taking an over on Khalil Herbert. I know a lot of people probably want us to go in the direction of Herbert. I mean, I just have a really hard time making that bet. I mean, with Allen Robinson here, of course, he has been highly disappointing. Now, in regards of getting to 3.5 receptions, this is a wide receiver that has done that so far 3 times this season. And since you had Justin Fields taking over at quarterback, he's only gotten there twice. But we're going to be assuming that they put up a decent amount of production. Let's see what Darnell Mooney has given us. I know Mooney's actually been the better wide receiver in Chicago since Justin Fields has taken over for whatever reason. Seems like a toss-up with Mooney. You know what? I'm probably going to be taking the over with Mooney here, essentially saying that Darnell Mooney gets that one long ball, and that's going to be putting the 49ers in a position where they're throwing the ball not consistently, but at least at a high enough clip where Jimmy G can hit over 212 passing yards. So we're going to take the Darnell Mooney over at 44.5 receiving yards. Let's go here, and we're going to be betting 15 to win 150. God, I feel like underdogs line. Let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the comment section if you think these underdog lines are tougher this week than they've been in the past few. Because in the past few, I have not been struggling nearly this much. Now let's go to our next one where, you're going to have Darrell Henderson. They had him for over 100 total yards. I guess they bring that down to 80 rushing yards. The spread is massive between the Houston Texans and the Los Angeles Rams this week. It's going to be the largest spread in football. But one thing that you have noticed is when the Los Angeles Rams have been getting to a significant lead, even in the fourth quarter, it's not like Sean McVay in this offense is pulling what you have in Green Bay, where they just completely stop throwing the ball and they turn into a run-first offense to just drain the clock. You actually have the Rams throwing the ball consistently in the fourth quarter, very similar to Tom Brady in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For whatever reason, even when they have that large lead late in the game, they are still going out there and almost padding the stats for Matthew Stafford. So for that reason, even though there's a super large spread, I don't love the idea of taking the over on Darrell Henderson. One thing that I ought to be interested in is taking this under on Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence has looked better over the past few weeks. It is going to be a very tough matchup, however, against the Los Angeles Rams. And if you're going to be looking at Trevor Lawrence so far this year, now if that 260 passing yards was actually going to be total yards, so we are going to get the extra 20 to 30 rushing yards added on for Trevor Lawrence, I would be avoiding this number. But knowing that this is 260 passing yards, Trevor Lawrence has gotten there half of the time this year, but some of the matchups he has had. He's got up against the Texans. He got there against the Miami Dolphins. Some of the tougher defenses in the Arizona Cardinals, the Denver Broncos, the Cincinnati Bengals. He hasn't been coming close. So I'm expecting this to be a pretty tough matchup. And I apologize. This is actually against the Seattle Seahawks. Nonetheless, this will be a tougher matchup against Seattle. Just given the fact that against the Seattle Seahawks here, that they're actually at the very bottom of the NFL with their plays run per game. So with that being the case, I think that you're going to most likely have this being one of the lower scoring contests. If you're looking up the implied team totals from Las Vegas this week, you're going to see that they have Jacksonville at the very bottom of this list. I mean, if we're pulling it up, they currently have the Jacksonville Jaguars with an implied team total of 20.25, only ahead of the Steelers, the Bears, the Miami Dolphins, the Texans, and the New York Jets. So I think we want to be taking this under on Lawrence. And in regards of Laviska Shenault versus Marvin Jones, Laviska has been slightly trending in the right direction since the DJ Chark injury. Agnew, 41.5 receiving yards. Of course, this has been someone that has been getting a bunch of publicity over there in Jacksonville. He's gotten to 41.5 receiving yards once this year, essentially. I mean, he's had 6.5 targets over the past 2 weeks. You know, we're going to be taking the under on Agnew. I really want to be taking this under on Lawrence mainly, to be completely honest. And then in regards of the Seattle Seahawks, super easy spot. Geno Smith at 220 passing yards. I know it's an easy matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but still, if you're looking historically at Geno Smith's adjusted yards per pass attempt, this is someone that I want to be betting against every time we can. So far this year, 131 passing yards, 209 passing yards, 167 passing yards. I'm going to be going through betting the under on Geno, and I think we can also bet the under on Lockett. So, god dang. We're taking some high upside swings. We're going to be betting 15 to win 150 with this bet. And keep in mind, we really only have to win one of these bets that we've made this live stream to have another profitable week here. Okay, so now our next one will be the New England Patriots. I think that this is honestly going to be a game that we definitely want to attack. I mean, Mike Williams, I think we're going to be getting that discount on Williams, considering the fact that this was someone that didn't practice at all going into his last game against the Baltimore Ravens. Remember, the last time we saw the Chargers, they got blown out against the Ravens. Mike Williams didn't practice all week. He played like 40% of the snaps. I think we're going to take the over on Mike Williams. If we're taking the over on Mike Williams, what we also probably want to be doing is assuming that you're going to have New England putting up a decent amount of points at the same time. If you're looking at Mac Jones, I mean, this past week, really hard to draw anything from, given the fact that they dropped 50 points against the Jets. But with Mac Jones, I mean, he has been getting to 245.5 passing yards quite often. He gets there week 1, week 3, week 4. I mean, he gets there in week 7 as well. Jacoby Myers has had a consistent target share in New England. If you're going to be looking at Jacoby Myers, I know the fantasy production isn't fantastic because he hasn't been finding the end zone, but nonetheless, this is someone that's seeing about 25% of his team's targets. He's had 59 targets through 7 weeks played. You know what I would rather do? I would rather probably just take the over on Mac Jones himself and take the over on Justin Herbert rather than Jacoby Myers, because the target share has trailed off over the past few weeks. If you're looking through the first 4 weeks, Myers was averaging over 10 targets a game, whereas the past 3 weeks, he's been averaging 6 targets. So yeah, I think we're going to be taking the over on Mike Williams, the over on Justin Herbert, and the over on Mac Jones. Let's go through, and we're going to be betting 17 to win 102. Let's go to our next pick. Our next pick will be, okay, the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, with Tampa, you have to take some of these overs here. What's really surprising is if you're looking at what Las Vegas is telling us this week, they're telling us that this is going to be a closer game. They have this only as a 4.5 point spread. Now, please, if someone knows something that I don't, I would love to hear it. I really think that both of these lines with Fournette and Chris Godwin are fantastic. Now, the issue is going through and creating correlation with these lines as well. I mean, even with Tom Brady here, I mean, Tom Brady is a quarterback that if you're putting the bar for his production at 304 passing yards, I mean, this is someone that's going to smash that almost every single week. I mean, that there is a competitive game. Of course, some of those games against the Eagles, against the Bears, he's not getting there just because the game's not close enough for them to consistently be taking those deep shots on the field. But against the Cowboys in a competitive game in week 1, against the Rams, I mean, against the Dolphins, I know that was a blowout, but if you're getting a close game for the Buccaneers, I think that we are going to be seeing Tom Brady getting close to 304 passing yards more times than not. The issue is I really want to be taking the Leonard Fournette over, and I'm honestly probably going to be prioritizing that. we're going to do a very small play. We're going to take the Fournette over, and we're going to be taking the unders for the New Orleans Saints, essentially betting that the Saints aren't going to be able to push the ball down the field, and it's going to cause the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be able to be a little bit more run heavy if they lead this game by big. So we're going to be taking the under on Kamara and Winston. I mean, Kamara at over 100 total yards, pretty tough considering the tough matchup that you have. I think we're going to be taking the over on Leonard Fournette at 58.5 rushing yards. If you're looking at the snap share with Fournette this past week, it's going to be really tough to try to translate that over at all, just given the fact that with Fournette in particular, this is a running back that, I mean, the game was so out of hand that they didn't really need him out on the field. We're going to be betting 17 to win 102. Okay, so now let's go to our next play. This will be the Denver Broncos and the Washington football team. Terry McLaurin at 72.5 receiving yards. McLaurin had 12 targets this past week. Heineke at 240. I know the Denver Broncos supposedly have one of the better defenses in the NFL. If you're going to be looking at the implied team totals this week, right now Vegas is telling us that, and keep in mind, let me be on the record in saying this. While I love coming out talking fantasy football, and I think that if you're putting me in a fantasy football league, I'm going to be definitely having a win rate much higher than expectations, as I have proven over a large sample. If you're asking me to consistently beat Las Vegas over-unders, if you're asking me to consistently beat player props on Underdog Fantasy, if you're asking me to go beat NFL spreads, whatever it may be, if you're asking us to go up against Vegas, as you're asking anybody to go up against Vegas, it is damn near impossible to be profitable in the long run. So something I love doing is pulling up these implied team totals that we're getting from sportsbooks, kind of telling us what we may be able to expect with overall offensive production here. They currently have Washington as the 24th highest scoring offense this week. So it's supposed to be a tough game against the Broncos. Washington's supposed to lose by 3 points. Very interesting to see that they move Noah Fant down there to 37.5 receiving yards. I mean, with Noah Fant, this has been someone that has been, fantastic with no Jerry Jeudy in fantasy football. I've been talking about selling Noah Fant based on the idea that Jerry Jeudy is going to come in and he will steal targets. Noah Fant has gotten to 37.5 receiving yards. Out of the past 4 weeks, he's gotten there 3 times so far, but with Jerry Jeudy coming in, probably not going to be able to take that line. In the case of Courtland Sutton has been like a top 3 wide receiver in terms of the percentage of air yards that he has had for his own offense. He has been a dominant alpha wide receiver. The problem is with Jeudy coming in, what production do we actually get from from Courtland Sutton? He has hit 69.5 receiving yards 3 weeks so far this season out of the 7 that he has played. So knowing that we're adding in Jerry Jeudy into this situation as well, I probably want to be taking the under on Courtland Sutton. And now in regards of Teddy Bridgewater, let me be on record saying that this Washington football team, their defense has been nothing close to what we expected it to be coming into the season. With Teddy Bridgewater for 251 passing yards, this is a quarterback that, it's a very fair mark for him. I'd imagine that I don't want to take this under with Jerry Jeudy coming back in, because I'd imagine that with how Judy's going to impact the overall offense, that Teddy Bridgewater can easily get there on his own with Courtland Sutton not getting to 69.5. So we're not taking the over. You can't take the over for the quarterback and under for the wide receiver at the same time. Definitely not going to be a play we're looking to make. But maybe instead we just take I don't want to take the under on McLaurin. We're going to have to try to find an under to take on the other side. McLaurin has gotten here 3 times so far. The problem is, it's not that I really like the under on Terry McLaurin. It's that I really like the under on Courtland Sutton. So then we're actually going to be taking the under on Terry McLaurin, and we're going to be taking the under on Taylor Heineke as well. Just given the fact that if we really want to hammer that Courtland Sutton under essentially 70 receiving yards, we're going to have to expect that the Denver Broncos aren't having to throw the ball as aggressively as they've had in the past. Now, in regards of Taylor Heineke getting to 240 passing yards, he has gotten there so far 4 out of 7 weeks this season, but it will be one of the tougher matchups he has had. Some of these games, he went up against the Falcons, he went up against the Giants. The tough defenses he's faced, he's faced the Chargers, 122 passing yards. Keep in mind, Ryan Fitzmagic played a decent amount of that game. Went up against the Bills, a tough defense, 212 passing yards. 2 weeks ago against the Chiefs, he wasn't able to effectively move the ball down the field. I think we're probably actually going to take the under on Heineke. I don't love the number on Heineke, but the problem is if we're taking the under on Sutton and the under on McLaurin, just from a correlation standpoint, we're going to have to go through and get them in. So yeah, let's go and let's take that under, and we're going to be betting 17 to win 102. Okay, so I hope that y'all enjoyed this video. I hope y'all enjoyed the stream. Make sure you go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. They're doing a 100% deposit match when you use promo code FLOCK, and you go through the link in the live chat. You go through the link in the description of the video. You go through the link in the comment section. Please go through, drop that like, subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. If you enjoy us live streaming every single night, making multiple videos every single day, there's no better way to support this channel, and I truly, truly do mean that. And yeah, disclaimer, like I said, I'm not going to be able to beat Underdog Fantasy over a long sample. I mean, if I thought I was smart, if you think you're smarter than Underdog Fantasy, know that they're giving you a 100% deposit bonus whenever you sign up because they are confident that they are smarter than you. So I definitely want to put that disclaimer out there. But yeah, thank you again for supporting the channel. Have a great day, and I hope to see y'all with the live stream tomorrow night.